Despite centuries between them, two American presidents shared a passion for big ideas, unconventional oratory skills, and a relationship with an establishment that doubted their chances of winning the presidency. One of those men is our current president, Donald Trump, but the other might surprise you. That's because it's Abraham Lincoln. Are there more parallels between Lincoln and Trump than you might think? Well, joining me now to talk about that is Lincoln scholar Harold Holzer, the director of the Roosevelt House Public Policy Institute at Hunter College and the former senior vice president of public affairs at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Harold, it's nice to have you with us as always. Now, again, most people, I suspect, you ask them about Abraham Lincoln, they're going to think one of our greatest presidents over. He surely must have won in a landslide. But tell us what the reality was for Lincoln and running for president the first time.
Well, I mean, the divisiveness between blue states and gray states, as they soon became, was a lot tenser and a lot more pronounced than even between blue states and red states. So as you might expect, the entire South voted against Lincoln. In fact, his name wasn't even on the ballot in a number of deep South states. And in the end, while he won the electoral majority, he only won 39.9% of the popular vote. And I think that's still the lowest total of any winner in a presidential election, at least the last 200 years of presidential elections. So obviously there were people there who would not recognize the result, and they didn't.
We've heard so much being made of the fact that Donald Trump, as a campaigner, essentially created a means of going around the press. Almost saying to them, not quite, I don't need you. You know, I can tweet, I can get my messages out there, and I'm fine with that. Talk about Abraham Lincoln and his relationship with the press.
Well, at the beginning, it was very conventional. But at the time, the press was entirely, openly, proudly partisan. So there were Republican newspapers and Democratic newspapers. Where he begins to do more manipulation and more going around the established press culture of the day was as president, when he devised this fascinating new means of communication. And it is very much like Twitter, because it was just as daring and unconventional as Twitter. He called it the public letter. He would write a letter to a political opponent or a journalist, a governor, and he would give the letter not only to its recipient, but to a newspaper. One newspaper would publish it, and then the next day, every newspaper would publish it, usually on the front page. And in this way, Lincoln communicated directly with the people on really crucial and controversial issues.
Let me ask you about something else. We've seen some, I think it's fair to say, some real animosity between President Trump and some members of the media. Let's go back to Lincoln's time. And during the course of the Civil War, and as you said, the suspension of certain liberties, civil liberties, how about some animosity between Lincoln and the press during that era?
President Trump has a long way to go before he gets to the point that Lincoln was at with the press. He locked up journalists. In the earlier days of the war, after newspapers, Democratic newspapers in New York City began discouraging recruits from enlisting in the Army, saying we should just let those southern states go, Lincoln, through the Secretary of State and the Postmaster General, prevented newspapers from going through the mails, had them seized from trains, ultimately locked up editors and closed down newspapers. Some of them never reopened. Now, they were pretty viciously racist newspapers, but Lincoln abrogated freedom of the press completely. And the other parallel, Jack, if I could just add one thing,
sure.
The shock that we all have about the notion of fake news. Abraham Lincoln was a master of fake news. In the run-up to emancipation in 1862, he wrote several openly disingenuous public letters saying whatever he did about emancipation, he would do only to save the Union. And if he could save the Union, he without freeing any slaves, he would happily do so. That was published, but what made it disingenuous was that Lincoln had already written the Emancipation Proclamation. He'd already told his cabinet that he was waiting only for a Union military victory in order to make it public.
I know that you have said that Lincoln is quoted as saying, public sentiment is everything. Are we seeing a reflection of Lincoln's thoughts in President Trump and the way he deals, especially with the media, do you think?
Well, here's a big difference. Lincoln said, without public sentiment, you can't do anything. That he who moves opinion is more important than he who enacts statutes. Lincoln had a reverence for public opinion. He was willing to bow to public opinion and the judgment of the people. What I think is the difference here is that he never denied that public opinion was being gauged accurately. He never suggested, except around the edges of race politics and immigration politics, another issue that was big in Lincoln's time, that elections were rigged. He did have, as he put it, reverence for the laws and a healthy respect for public opinion.
Harold, it's always a pleasure having you with us. Look forward to talking with you again soon. You be well.
Thanks, Jack. Happy Lincoln's birthday.
Thank you so much. Take care.